Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session this morning on African entrepreneurship and education for advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. Before we get started, I wanted to give you a few reminders about the session. Your microphone and cameras will be muted throughout the session, and if you'd like to ask some questions, please do so in the Q&A section of the program. You can also use the chat feature to talk with your fellow attendees. We wanted to remind you at the bottom of your screen, there's a slider. You can move that to the left or to the right to change the viewing experience between the size of the slides and the size of the presenters, according to what you like. Please, if you're having any issues, use the moderator chat to let our technical support know that you need some help, and we will be really pleased to help you. So without any more delay, I really would love to welcome our two presenters this morning, Carrie Waterman from the University of California, Davis, and Gaidi Faraj from the African Leadership University in Rwanda. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Should we take it from here then, Mary Lou?
Yes, please do.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start. So thank you so much for the introduction and everyone joining us. As Mary Lou said, I'm Dr. Waterman, and I'm currently with the Institute of Global Nutrition at the University of California in Davis. And I've been working over the past several years in East Africa mainly through an NIH, the National Institute of Health grant. And through my time there, I was able to partner with Gaidi and the African Leadership University at two of their different locations. We'll talk a little bit about both of our institutions and then go through some of the grant projects that we've had and what we're currently planning. So this collaboration between UC Davis and the African Leadership University started really in 2017 through some seed funding and grants through UC Davis. And this was really aimed to harness and cross-transfer expertise in education and entrepreneurship and sustainable development. So ALU and students at UC Davis are really focused on SDGs, including topics such as poverty alleviation, food security, health, nutrition-sensitive agriculture, and information technology. So this is nutrition-sensitive agriculture has really been my work, where we look at agriculture but also look at the quality of the products. And then really what we're planning for this year, although certainly there has been some changes because of COVID, is an entrepreneurship workshop at ALU in the spring of 2021, and this will be done online instead of in person. So we'll just talk to you about some of those details. So just to give you a little background, UC Davis is located in Central California, and it's really been one of the prime agriculture schools in the US. California is the 5th largest economy in the world because of its agricultural production. So a lot of researchers here are aimed at solving problems related to food and health and the environment. And certainly in recent weeks and years, the wildfires here in California have also put it on the forefront of addressing climate change. UC Davis has the World Food Center and about 60 other centers that are focused on SDGs and around agriculture and health and nutrition. And they also have the UC Davis Global Affairs Department, and their mission is really to inspire global curiosity and understanding and engagement, which is something that I've been passionate about. They also host the Mandela Washington Fellows Program, and in total they've provided over $50 million in seed grants, faculty and students engaged in different countries around the world. I was able to secure some of this funding to help support fostering a collaboration with the African Leadership University. And the first one that we received as I said, was in 2017, and the title was From California to East Africa, Building Collaborations for Innovative Agriculture and Health Development. So ALU has a campus in Mauritius, and I was able to visit that. And from here, I'll let Gaidi talk to you a little bit more about ALU and its background and why there was such an overlap between our interest and theirs.
Thank you, Carrie. Yes, so as Carrie mentioned, I am with African Leadership University. I'm currently in Kigali, Rwanda, at our campus here. But as she mentioned, we have two campuses. Our first campus was opened in Mauritius when ALU was founded in 2015. We opened this campus in Rwanda in 2017, so we're still a very new, very young institution. Currently at our Rwanda campus, we have a little over 800 students, and they come from 35 different countries across Africa. And Global Challenges is our signature program. So we'll talk a little bit more about Global Challenges in a minute, but that's really what made this such a good partnership. In general, ALU focuses on creating problem solvers. That's our overall mission. We also have an MBA and a Master's in Management program. And the school was born out of a desire to improve tertiary education in Africa. So right now, only about 8% of high school leavers, high school graduates that are eligible for college or university are able to go to college in Africa right now, just because there's not enough seats. So we were trying to address that problem by really scaling up the number of seats, and particularly the number of seats for quality education on the continent. And our mission is to develop the next generation of ethical and entrepreneurial leaders. And we do this through a mindset of missions, not majors. And this is where we talk a little bit more about entrepreneurship and global challenges. And so we have a major theme of entrepreneurial leadership here. And we say that entrepreneurs are basically problem solvers. They see an opportunity, they take risks in order to solve that problem. Here we say that an entrepreneur is somebody who does more than anybody thought was possible with less than anybody thought was possible. And that's really important with our student base because a lot of them are coming from resource-strapped environments. And so how do you think really creatively about working with the resources that you have available? As I said, we also talk about missions, not majors. So we want our students to come in and really think about what kind of impact do they want to have in the world, whether they're in business or in computer science, et cetera. They should be really thinking about how they're using that as a pathway to solving some greater problem that's impacting the community. Global Challenges is our signature program, so it's one of our degree programs. We say it's mission driven, again, students choosing a mission. We think that if students choose the mission, choose something that they're really passionate about, it'll make them more invested in their own learning experience. We emphasize self-directed learning. And so, and this is where the partnership becomes really important. We recognize that we have limited resources to house internally all the expertise needed to help guide students through the various missions they might be interested in. So how do we encourage them and teach them how to rely on mentors, outside resources, external partnerships to help guide them through their mission projects? Interdisciplinary problem solving. So again, you know, we have some students who are interested in agriculture, and we'll talk more about them, but we also have students who are interested in equal pay and women's empowerment. We have students who are interested in urbanization and the problems associated with that, or maybe with infrastructure development. So our students have missions that are across the entire gamut. And so again, this is where the self-directed learning comes in. This is where external partnerships become important. Because it is so interdisciplinary, we don't have all the resources internally to cover all of these disciplines. And again, they're grounded in entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial thinking. And last but not least is this theme of leadership. So as an institution, we're not trying to develop specialists so much as we're trying to develop leaders who understand how to pull together a team to solve problems. Not that any of our students are going to individually be an expert technician in a particular field, but rather they'll be generalists that understand how to approach problem solving and how to harness and gather the resources necessary to attack that particular problem. Our Global Challenges program focuses on what we say are the 7 grand challenges and 7 great opportunities. These are, so we have a loose association with the UN SDG. So a lot of our students might look at the SDG list and that's how they choose what mission they want to focus on, but we often talk about these particular 14 challenges and opportunities as core challenge areas currently impacting the African continent. And for those who want to dive a little deeper into the work that we do, please, if you have some time, check out aluglobalfocus.com. This is actually a blog site of articles written only by our students about their particular missions, the work that they're doing, responding to global issues that they see out there. So it's a great place to kind of get a sample of the student work that we have going
on. Thank you, Gaidi. So basically, after learning about ALU and the global challenges, it overlapped a lot with what I was doing in terms of nutrition, agriculture, and also resource management. So this first grant that was provided by UC Davis was to further some of my work I'm working with a plant called Moringa oleifera in Africa and smallholder farmers and businesses there. So we had a couple UC Davis students that were in the International Agricultural Development Program come and do 6-week projects with the farmers. And they were able to get their research done and bring their innovation to some of the farmers. These are just some of the pictures of mainly my work in Kenya. And some of them dealing with processing moringa as well. So small tech innovations that can lead to value-added products and really looking at the whole value chain. My background is more in chemistry and nutrition, but once you get, on the continent, it becomes more of how do people grow this? Is it affordable for them to grow? What is the best way to process it? And how can they get it to market? So then when I attended ALU in Mauritius, I basically used moringa as a sample or a tool that could be used to address SDGs. And this just really involved a lot of conversations with students and really compelling questions about some of these international businesses that operate in sourcing materials from Africa and selling in Europe and the US. So they had a lot of great ideas of kind of how to create these businesses within Africa, for Africans. So this was really great to get to know the global challenges students, and I knew that UC Davis wanted to continue to support these kind of collaborations. So we also did, as part of this work, a nutrition-sensitive agriculture innovation workshop. This was at the ALU in Rwanda. And this basically involves students coming into groups and developing pitch decks or business plans or development plans that addressed kind of the first 3 SDGs. So looking at health and nutrition, they presented their projects and then the students themselves evaluated them. So this was kind of what that looked like. And then their evaluations were given back to the groups. The only thing it was a 2-day workshop, and they really just got to the first surface of their decks. Some of the groups went even further with them, but the general consensus was that they'd like to do more of this and have them be more in depth. And so that's kind of where we're at now and expanding to more of the SDGs. Out of this relationship that we had built, I am continuing to mentor some of the capstone projects and global challenges students at ALU. So even just having a little bit of insight and connection to networks, in Kenya, at UC Davis, even at Colorado State, just really linking students to other people, because sometimes just a 5-minute call with someone else can be very valuable. I am also a visiting faculty member at ALU now, and then we are continuing to apply for grants between ALU and UC Davis. Out of this workshop that we did in 2018, one group of students had come up with this idea that uses insect technology. So they're using insects to create protein, and then add that into animal feeds. So this MagaFarm student venture is now an established company, and they are moving forward to try and grow and expand. And this is really quite phenomenal because it checks a lot of boxes in terms of SDGs and uses local resources and innovative solutions. So it's quite exciting.
Yeah, can I jump in here for a second?
Yes, please.
This is a great example. One of the things that Carrie is leaving out is that when she did her nutrition sensitive agriculture workshop, the idea of the insect protein first came up within that kind of 2-day workshop. And so some of the students who were in that group took the idea, continue to iterate it, continue to play with it, do some more research, and then they formed this company that actually talked about using insect proteins as a animal feed, and they were very successful. The picture here is them winning a $100,000 seed grant at the Ignite Africa pitch competition, which was held last year in Addis in Ethiopia. And this company has continued to kind of grow and thrive. They're actually functioning now, producing a product and taking a number of farm clients here on the ground in Rwanda. And it speaks to our theme here as developing entrepreneurs, because one of the things that we say to our students is that we want them to become job creators and not just job seekers. So the initial students who launched this campaign, there were 3 of them that were ALU students, have actually now begun to employ other students as they try to grow their company. So they're a great model of what we want to develop here at ALU in terms of entrepreneurial leaders who are creating their own ventures, but also doing so in a way that addresses global challenges, addresses the SDGs, and creates sustainable solutions.
Yep, so we're hoping to see more projects like this come out of the grant that we have for this year, which is basically just expanding on that to not just include kind of agriculture, but a lot of these other SDGs as well. So this was planned to take place in Kigali over a couple of weeks and allow students time in between to really develop their ideas a little bit more and actually reach out. So it goes from, instead of just being a lesson that you're doing in a class, to actually a project that you're trying to manifest, or at least go through those steps. And so this project will really be based on an entrepreneurship academy that was developed at UC Davis, that was developed by Andrew Hargadon, who's in the Graduate School of Management. And his expertise is on innovation and entrepreneurship and in sustainable technologies as well. So he will be a part of this, and we're basically going to adapt their program to kind of what's being faced by the students at ALU and the projects of their interests. And then also on the team for this project is Raheem Reed, and he's at the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. He's had a lot of experience in Africa and with different populations here in the US. So we're hoping that we can also get the interest of Black American students here at UC Davis to engage with the African Leadership University students as well as part of this. And hopefully by next year, Gaidi will also be able to come to UC Davis and give a talk. So the plan for the actual workshop is kind of adapted. This is their schedule for the Entrepreneurship Academy that's done at UC Davis. And we'll kind of follow these leads, but then take some adaptations. But as you can see, it's kind of, defining your problems, developing pitch decks, and then networking. So we'll bring in entrepreneurs from Rwanda, from Kenya. This will all be online, as I said. And instead of doing this as 1, 2, and day 3, we'll do this first one and probably have a week or 2 in between, another day and a week or 2 in between. So you can see also that they'll be making some market validation, some customer calls. So they'll actually be contacting different organizations that they would want to get information from to develop their projects. Andrew Hargadon, when I took the academy, one of the things that he focused on was saying that the innovation is really in the network, and it's not, how much you know yourself, but who you know. So a lot of these new startup businesses do need to have kind of a network within the country that they're operating and within an international context. We'll also include in this kind of a mock angel investor panel. So we'll get people from both the US and in Rwanda to vote on the pitch decks and help the students develop them to be stronger. So the goal of this is at the end, they'll have a real pitch deck that they can take to, look for funding, look for investments, look for grants, and look for internships that would help them on their path. We want to make sure that the students, are aware, and the faculty, that we're learning from them of what's going on in Africa, and they're us about what's going on in the agriculture sector within our expertise in California. These are just some infographics I wanted to put up about, what is going on with ag tech and angel investments and jobs in Africa. So we'll hopefully just be, helping connect students and faculty across this landscape. And moving forward, as you can see, we're kind of at this 2019 to 2021 SDGs grant, but I just wanted to put it in context of, working in these international communities has, it builds off of each other. And so, through this grant, we will hopefully be able to apply for more applications to address SDGs, both the students and the faculty and at the university level through agencies like USAID, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, National Institute of Health, and the African Development Bank. So we're always seeking more funding, in this area of addressing the issues, but also then promoting the educational aspect of it. This is a picture of Gaidi and Raheem here in Sacramento, and just, considering those networks, not just within the universities, but even Raheem is connected with the Chamber of Commerce and business here. So keeping those connections going. And I think that's all I really have. Gaidi, if you want to add in anything else.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a note about, you continuing to be a visiting faculty with us and supervising our capstones, the relationship with Raheem and upcoming with Andrew, is that this for us is really piloting a model where we are incorporating a lot of external experts. And so we have a program called Expert in Residence, which is how we first got you engaged in Mauritius. But we're really looking at how feasible it is for us to be more programmatic and deliberate about incorporating external people engaging with our students, either in short term, like coming in like you did to lead the short term workshops, or longer term engagements as capstone supervisors, et cetera. Because we're looking at a model where we have an abundance of young people on the continent. We have a abundance of creative, innovative, aspiring entrepreneurs who want to address the global challenges. They want to address SDGs, but they don't always have the support of expertise, people who are in the industry in certain sectors that can help guide them so they don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, every time. So that's what's really beneficial about this relationship that we have with UC Davis. And we're really getting a sense of how this can work and how we can possibly scale this up. And in partner with other institutions, with other NGOs, research centers, and also independent researchers and independent entrepreneurs and industry people who might want to come and lend expertise to us. So that's what we're really getting out of this as well. It's not just the immediate impact on the students that we have, but how do we create a model that can scale up as we address the global challenges and SDGs.
Yeah, that's great. And I think from UC Davis's end and Global Affairs, they're looking to do the same thing. Well, to have basically part of their mission is to have every student at UC Davis has some international experience, whether they travel or they're in a certain community here, some type of engagement. And so I think one of the things that Gaidi, you and I have talked about is making this sustainable beyond just my personal engagement with ALU. So really making ALU a part of global affairs at UC Davis. So from our end, we want to have not just myself, but other faculty developing mentorship programs for students at ALU, and possibly students from ALU coming to UC Davis and using the same resources. There's also a potential to develop like a pen pal or semester program or student-to-student exchange between the universities, because while we're very far apart, there are a lot of similarities in terms of what we're facing with global challenges. So it's good for both to be engaged. And then I would also just mention that because of this partnership that we've developed between UC Davis and ALU, they've also been interested in developing a strategic plan for UC Davis probably having a greater presence in Africa, and what would that look like? So we've been able to, Gaidi and I have been able to consult with them on their strategies for potentially putting up like a external campus somewhere in East Africa. So it's just from my end, I've been really impressed to see ALU grow, and I'm hoping to continue to foster this collaboration together.
Yes, as are we. And the last point I think I would make that's important about this, the overall topic, is that there's a significant demographic difference between what's happening right now in Africa and the continent and what's happening in the United States. And so entrepreneurship is very hot, as it is globally, but there are a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs on the African continent. And this is an opportunity for also to influence that narrative, to really steer that energy and that potential into solving problems, into addressing the SDGs, into addressing global challenges, and not necessarily thinking about entrepreneurship as just filling market gaps and trying to make a lot of fast money, which is sometimes what the narrative is out there. And so this relationship is really about how do we harness that energy for a greater good and for solving some of these problems that are impacting all of us, not just on the African continent.
Good. Well, thank you. I think, Mary Lou, if you want to take it from here, and if there are any questions, I think we're both happy to answer.
Great. Yes. So I wanted to mention to all of the attendees, if you have questions, you'll see a little box on the right-hand side of your screen that says Q&A. Please feel free to add your questions to that list for our panelists that they will be happy to answer. To get us started, I actually was very interested, Gaidi, you were talking just a moment ago about support for students and how to connect them to the necessary expertise so that they can realize their entrepreneurship goals. I wonder, what kind of support did you give that business that began the animal feed business that won the award? What kind of, you mentioned that the idea of that started in the workshop that the two of you ran. Yeah. How did you support students to getting through to the point where they were able to submit it to the competition and win the grant?
That's a great question. So we support them in two ways. So as I mentioned, the workshop was actually part of a class. So we have a specific class for students in global challenges that is just focused on generative thinking. How do you think about creating new ideas, creating solutions, and then how do you iterate that? So they get an introduction to design thinking, to moonshot thinking, et cetera, and different tools that they can use to develop these ideas. So once the students came up with the first idea in the workshop, they had a number of opportunities within that class to go back and iterate that and do more research. So structured within global challenges, we support students coming up with ideas that some of them are on a business track, like these students, but some of them might be on a policy track or thinking about civil society and behavior change campaigns, et cetera. So we allow for several different tracks for solutions to develop. But we also have a program called the Student Venture Program, SVP, and that's a separate department that supports any students who are trying to create a for-profit venture. And so they can go to the SVP program to get coaching, to get support for developing pitch decks. They get feedback on how do you develop your financials, et cetera. So we offer broad workshops for all students who are interested, and then we offer specific coaching for students who have their own venture that needs to be advanced a little further. And we actually assign faculty to help coach specific groups so they get that one-on-one support.
Great, thanks very much. And Carrie, you mentioned that with the upcoming workshop that you're going to be holding online, one of the goals will be to connect more UC Davis students with students at the African Leadership University. I wonder, could you talk a little bit more about that? What do you have in mind for those kinds of collaborations? Would that be them developing entrepreneurial ideas together?
I think that was more just maybe about kind of connecting students and making sure that, students at UC Davis know about the African Leadership University, know what a student experience is like going there. So more of like a pen pal program. There are these for freshman semester courses that they can take for 1 credit at UC Davis. So there's another faculty member who had developed a similar program that he had wanted to work with me on. He was working with China and UC Davis, and so students there were communicating back and forth. And it's often just about I think sharing experiences and learning what people are going through. And then if there is mutual interest, we would try and foster that. So in this context, it would probably be more getting students at both places that are interested in the same kind of projects and ideas to just chat and share stories. Unfortunately, we can't have everybody going back and forth, even because of climate change itself. And then, just logistically and cost-wise, it's not practical. But having a conversation with people really can open your mind. And if people are trying to address, relevant problems in Africa here, you really do need firsthand information, And if you're looking for expertise, it really is good to connect with people directly. So it would be something like that, just, a student exchange. Every few weeks, we would do some sharing and some online development for that.
Great, thanks very much. I wanted to turn this over to the audience of participants. Does anyone have a question that you'd like to add to direct to either Carrie or Gaidi about entrepreneurship and education between UC Davis and the African Leadership University? You can add your questions to the Q&A panel or to the chat.
So that's the one difficulty of this shift to the online experience is that ALU, we require people to be very engaged. And so if we were in person, I would be calling people out.
Just from the list of attendees, I do see several colleagues from Africa who are participating in online collaborations between student groups. And I know that this is a way to spark understanding, but also to spark creativity. And Gaidi, you were talking earlier about the idea of entrepreneurship is sometimes being taken in a very narrow way, as is the idea of leadership is taken in a very narrow way, that these are the people who are in positions of power rather than some of the examples you gave earlier about students who are able to really look at problems, address those problems, and take a leadership role as a way to kind of collaborate and connect people. So I know that this is a topic that's of interest to people. I wonder if you might want to take a couple minutes to talk a little bit more about the ways that you support leadership development in your students.
Yes, absolutely. Even with these students who create ventures while they're here, we're very clear that we're trying to teach students to be problem solvers first and foremost. And we use entrepreneurship to teach leadership more so than to teach entrepreneurship for entrepreneurship's sake. And so again, we want them to develop a set of tools that they can use to address problems that they're passionate about while they're here. But if they learn those skills, they can apply them to any problem anywhere. And so as they leave us and they get their jobs when they're in their early career, they'll be able to address problems that someone throws at them. Part of this is also learning how to learn. So that's why we focus on the self-directed learning, because again, if they're confronted with a challenge or they have a new manager or boss who tells them to go and do something, a lot of times, particularly when you're a young professional, that can be very intimidating. If they understand how to address problem solving, if they understand how to teach themselves new material, they won't be intimidated and they'll be able to excel in that space. And so that's what we're really doing. We're trying to create people who are confident to go out there and thrive in a fast-changing and uncertain environment.
And I can add from my end, my background is the hard sciences, but when I took the Business Development Fellows program at UC Davis, that was designed to basically take expert scientists and get them to think as entrepreneurs and leaders and businesses. So in developing pitch decks and those types of things, it really can change your perspective. And so to have the insight of the research and technology, and then combining that with how do you approach, how do you innovate, how do you develop business models was a great combination. And so I really wanted to share that that kind of openness to being able to say, hey, you can apply for a grant, a development grant, or you can develop a business plan. And so as long as you're achieving your goals and that we're helping address these issues, then I think there's a lot of different ways forward. And just changing your mindset for me as a scientist was really amazing. So it was great to bring in these people who had this background and then really learned about developing business plans. And I do see in the chat a question that says, how did you achieve a shared set of values in your project? And Gaidi, you can expand on this, but I would just say that my work and the mission of UC Davis and Global Affairs is, to advance the SDGs, and the SDGs and the Global Challenges program are basically directly linked. While my focus was kind of on agriculture, nutrition, there was a lot of overlap with student interest in those fields because they're coming from homes where they're in communities that don't have good quality food, so they're interested in developing business plans around that. But there were certainly students who were interested in other areas beyond my expertise. So that is then to, link them with other people, other institutions at UC Davis. But yeah, the shared goal is really the SDGs.
Yeah.
Gaidi, did you want to comment on that at all about particularly how the SDGs relate to those problems and challenges that you presented early on?
Yeah, I mean, Carrie hit it, but the other part of it is because, the SDGs are super broad. So,
Yeah.
Even though Carrie has a relatively narrow focus around agriculture and nutrition sensitive agriculture, our students need exposure. So from our position as an institution, we want to bring in people who have expertise and industry experience to just share their own experiences and get our students to stimulate their thinking in these different areas. Because maybe a young person thinks that they're really interested in this, but it's really because that's all they've been exposed to. And so for us, it's about exposing them to as many different perspectives and existing problem solvers, and Carrie's one of those, as possible. So it might stimulate an interest in agriculture that they didn't realize was there before. So maybe it's dormant, and she can help wake that up. So for us, the alignment was really easy. Anybody who's addressing SDGs in general aligns with what we're trying to do in global challenges.
Wonderful, thank you. We have a question in the Q&A about the sustainability of a program once grant funding begins to dry up. I wonder if you've thought about the longer term sustainability of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, well, one interesting thing about COVID and kind of switching to an online format is that, if we had done this in person, it probably wouldn't have been recorded and it probably just would have happened that one time. But now by developing it online, we're hoping that even without, and even this Global Affairs grant is just a small amount of funding, but it's just enough to foster a little bit more growth. But the plan is to develop it as an online platform and a database for students. So we would then probably do this annually, and grant funding should still be available and the universities should still be supporting these programs. And then you would have, an online database of projects, ideas, of the workshop, and we can kind of refine that as we go along. And so that would be something that would be sustainable, and faculty at UC Davis and ALU would know that this collaboration exists and they would be able to be a part of it. There would be so I'm hoping that UC Davis and Global Affairs and ALU will continue to support that. It doesn't necessarily need a lot of funding, but it just needs time. And when these can be interwoven into coursework and credits and internship projects and faculty projects, then it can be really, really powerful.
Great.
Agreed.
Okay.
And I think that I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think COVID actually makes this more sustainable because it shows other people who might have been skeptical that these long distance online relationships can be really impactful and possible.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
we
there's,
have a final question, it looks like, in the chat about how are you empowering young women in an entrepreneur space?
especially in the midst of COVID. Gaidi, do you want to, I can speak or you can, why don't you first?
Well, I can say just in terms of what we're doing at ALU, our student population is pretty equally balanced between young men and young women. And so we open all those opportunities up to both. They get supported by SVP, et cetera. There was a young woman on the Mago Farms team. But recently we have developed some other partnerships to make sure that what we're doing at ALU is accessible to young entrepreneurial Africans from disadvantaged backgrounds. And so we actually have a recent partnership that is going to provide scholarships that are focused on young women from disadvantaged backgrounds. So they will be a significant part of our incoming class when we bring our next students in January. Because of COVID, we suspended our September intake, so we'll bring them in January. And that'll be our first wave of these new scholarship students. So we do have some partnerships that are put in place specifically to make sure that what we're doing here is accessible to young women.
And I would just add that, as I said, I'm mentoring some of the students at ALU and obviously women. So I think, just having expertise in me being one example of a woman who's, the family has a successful career, provides some example of how that can be done, and also with international travel. So I mean, I had my child with me when I went to ALU in Mauritius. So there's a dynamic of, what does it look like for women in careers, both in the US and in Africa. So at least providing them, guidance, support, encouragement, and examples of women who are doing that, And I think, my experience in Rwanda was that there's a very different perspective. There's a lot of equity and equality encouraged, I think, for women there that was unique to me, that I think could also be modeled and spread even within Africa, that would be beneficial. So, these are complex problems, and I think ALU is doing a really interesting. I remember, Gaidi, you had a workshop where you kind of do gender reversal things, and a lot of addressing this, because it's, women are half the population. So there's no way to address SDGs if you're not including women in this, and that they're not also being the ones that are, coming to these leadership roles and having a place at the table there.
Yeah, and Rwanda is actually a great example of that. And that's one of the reasons we opened our campus here. The government has been very proactive in making sure that women get roles in leadership. I think Rwanda has the second highest percentage of women in parliament as any country in the world. It's something that we constantly are encouraged by the government around. And so it's a regular theme that we bring up. Women's empowerment is one of our global challenge issues. So we're very deliberate about trying to address that in our school culture.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. All right. Well, so we have come to the end of our session. We want to thank very much Carrie and Gaidi for your great presentation and for the engaging conversation that we've had. We hope everyone had the opportunity to see the slides, to be able to follow up with UC Davis and to follow up with the African Leadership University if you're interested in having further discussions. This session was recorded, and so it will be posted on the website for you to come back and reference later. So thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing you in future sessions.
Thank you so much, Mary Lou. Thank you, Gaidi. Thank you all.